Eyes of Fire, 1983. A disgraced preacher leads a small group of settlers away from their community and into unclaimed woodland, hoping isolation will offer a new beginning. Instead, the forest itself becomes the defining presence, dense, watchful, and resistant to intrusion. Long before the threat is explained, the land feels inhabited. Faith guides the group forward, but uncertainty begins to erode conviction as strange figures appear between trees and distant voices echo at night. The colonial setting grounds the story in survival and belief, with tension rising from both environmental danger and spiritual doubt. Shot on location in Missouri forests, the film relies on natural light, shifting shadows and environmental sound to create unease. Supernatural manifestations are brief and often ambiguous, blending with branches, fog, and darkness rather than standing apart from them. As the settlers push deeper into territory that does not welcome them, the boundary between spiritual fear and physical threat becomes increasingly difficult to separate, leaving the forest itself as the story's most persistent presence. The Lift, 1983. The setting is ordinary, a modern office building filled with routine and repetition. Employees move between floors without a second thought, until the elevator begins behaving unpredictably. Doors close too quickly. Systems override commands. Mechanical failures turn fatal without warning. An investigation follows, who initially treats each malfunction as a solvable engineering problem. Corporate management provides explanations, but inconsistencies mount as additional incidents occur. The possibility of a deeper cause slowly replaces mechanical reasoning. Suspense builds inside narrow shafts and steel compartments. Deaths are sudden and efficient, relying on timing, confined space, and physical stunt work rather than drawn-out sequences. The building's clean, impersonal architecture contrasts with the increasingly chaotic events inside it. Everyday technology becomes a source of uncertainty, turning a routine workplace fixture into the center of escalating and unpredictable danger. Revenge of the Dead, 1983. A used typewriter ribbon carries fragments of research that shouldn't exist. The notes reference K-zones, rare geographic locations where the boundary between life and death may not function as expected. What begins as simple curiosity for a novelist gradually becomes an obsession, leading him toward sealed laboratories, abandoned properties, and the remnants of experiments that were quietly shut down. The investigation moves carefully through interviews, archived material, and cautious travel across rural Italy. Each conversation adds another fragment to the theory, suggesting that resurrection may not be fantasy, but a contained scientific anomaly. The tone remains grounded, with the protagonist approaching the mystery analytically rather than emotionally. Moments of horror are restrained and spaced apart. Preserved corpses, silent buildings left untouched, and subtle indications that something once revived may not be entirely dormant. The atmosphere relies heavily on stillness and unanswered questions rather than confrontation. The premise lingers on the unsettling possibility that certain places defy natural law, and that knowledge of those places has been intentionally suppressed for decades. Scalps, 1983. A burial site disturbed under the heat of daylight. From that point forward, the story narrows into survival. A group of archaeology students unintentionally awakens a vengeful spirit tied to past violence, and the remote landscape becomes both isolation and battleground. The structure follows familiar slasher rhythms, group disagreements, separation, and sudden attacks that thin their numbers. Weapons associated with the land and its history become instruments of retaliation, linking each death back to the original trespass. Panic spreads as the students realize they are being hunted across terrain that offers little cover. The wide canyon setting provides stark visual contrast, favoring open skies and exposed rock formations instead of shadowed interiors. Practical effects focus on scalping and close-quarters assaults, handled through straightforward makeup work and physical staging rather than elaborate creature design. The film blends supernatural revenge mythology with early 80s independent slasher pacing, using location, isolation, and retribution as its central driving forces. If you're enjoying the video so far, take a second to like and subscribe, and let us know your favorite in the comments. Now, let's keep going. Panic Beats, 1983. Stone walls, inherited history, and a marriage already under strain set the tone long before anything overtly supernatural appears. A woman with a serious heart condition relocates to her husband's ancestral mansion, where she begins seeing a medieval knight tied to a centuries-old act of betrayal and violence. Each sighting deepens her anxiety and raises the same question: is this a haunting rooted in history or something deliberately engineered in the present? Paul Naschy shapes the film both behind and in front of the camera, constructing a traditional Spanish Gothic mystery built around doubt and inheritance. Julia Sally plays the increasingly fragile wife with mounting fear, while Lola Gauss remains watchful in the background, adding another layer of quiet suspicion to the household dynamic. Flashbacks to armored brutality contrast with the stillness of the estate's corridors and shadowed staircases. The medieval figure appears in stark, deliberate bursts, reinforcing the connection between past cruelty and present tension. The heart condition adds urgency, making each scare feel potentially fatal without relying on overt spectacle. It unfolds as a measured Gothic tale built on suspicion, legacy, and the slow erosion of trust within enclosed walls. The Boxer's Omen, 1983. What starts as a story about a brutal fight quickly expands beyond the ring. A boxer searching for answers about his brother's coma is drawn into a spiritual conflict involving Buddhist monks, black magic practitioners, and a karmic bond that ties their fates together. The personal quest becomes part of a larger supernatural struggle. Training sequences and ritual ceremonies unfold alongside confrontations that grow increasingly elaborate. Sorcerers engage in occult battles that extend into hidden chambers, sacred spaces, and dreamlike realms shaped by ritual and belief. The narrative widens rather than narrows, layering mythology onto physical revenge. The imagery becomes progressively more intense: spellcasting rites, animated remains, bodily transformations achieved through prosthetics, puppetry, and stop-motion inserts. Practical effects dominate these sequences, giving the supernatural confrontations a tactile presence that rarely feels restrained. Martial arts structure merges with occult horror, creating a story that steadily shifts from grounded drama into expansive supernatural warfare, driven by ritual, magic, and destiny. The Devonsville Terror, 1983. Three new arrivals in a small New England town are enough to disturb its balance. Independent and outspoken, they attract suspicion from residents, whose history includes witch trials and unresolved grievances passed down through generations. Hostility builds gradually: whispers in public spaces, confrontations behind closed doors, and social isolation that grows more aggressive over time. The town's past resurfaces through flashbacks to colonial executions, visually linking inherited fear to modern hostility and reinforcing the idea of history repeating itself. Supernatural elements hover near the surface: unexplained events, sudden behavioral shifts, and suggestions that the executed witch's legacy has not fully faded. Donald Pleasance appears as a doctor who understands more about the town's origins than most are willing to admit. The story moves between modern conflict and echoes of persecution, framing both as parts of a cycle that resurfaces whenever difference challenges tradition. Amityville 3D, 1983. Skeptical journalist John Baxter buys 112 Ocean Avenue to debunk its legends. With his estranged wife Nancy and partner Melanie, he dives in, only to unleash real danger. Walls bleed, objects fly, appliances rebel. What starts as research spirals into desperate survival as the evil fights back against scrutiny. Richard Fleischer embraces 3D spectacle, hurtling threats, immersive shadows, gimmicks that burst from the screen. Tony Roberts' rational Baxter unravels in an irrational nightmare, while Tess Harper's Nancy provides emotional depth, and Candy Clark's Melanie adds grounded vulnerability. The house feels aggressively alive, every room a potential ambush, with breathing walls and shifting staircases. Effects mix practical stunts with playful 3D flair, slamming doors, floating knives, kinetic chaos. It amplifies the claustrophobic unpredictability of haunted spaces. It shifts from psychological depth to visual thrills while preserving the cursed mythology. Themes of hubris, curiosity, and persistent evil endure across occupants. A bold, chaotic entry that stands out for its innovative spectacle and relentless energy. Devil Fetus, 1983. It begins with an auction purchase, an ornate vase brought home without much thought. Once opened, it releases a demonic force that overtakes its new owner and results in the birth of something unnatural, quickly hidden away out of fear and shame. Years later, what was buried doesn't stay buried. The entity resurfaces through the family's daughters, spreading possession from one body to the next inside a single household, escalating into chaos that overtakes nearly everyone under the roof. This Hong Kong production leans heavily into supernatural upheaval, with scenes shifting abruptly from domestic routine to violent spiritual intrusion. Performances are broad and emotionally heightened, matching the intensity of the possession sequences rather than grounding them in subtle realism. Family confrontations often erupt without warning, as the demon moves unpredictably between hosts. Transformations happen suddenly and often, with practical makeup, fluids, and creature inserts driving the spectacle. The result is a fast-moving blend of family melodrama and graphic supernatural horror, centered almost entirely on escalating physical manifestations of the curse and the struggle to contain it. Spasms, 1983. A wealthy man plagued by terrifying visions brings a deadly secret back to North America, a psychic connection to a massive supernatural snake. When the serpent is captured for study and inevitably breaks free, its rampage leaves a trail of mutilated victims, each attack mirrored in the man's tormented mind. Directed by William Fruet, Spasms combines creature-feature thrills with psychic horror. Oliver Reed plays Jason Kinski, the cursed millionaire, while Peter Fonda lends a quieter presence as Dr. Tom Brazilian, the scientist desperate to understand the link. Both men elevate the material, their performances grounding the film's wilder ideas. The creature itself is ambitious for its budget. With point-of-view shots, bloody aftermaths, and flashes of the giant snake brought to life through practical effects, the film delivers moments of grisly spectacle. The kills are vicious, leaving mangled corpses in their wake, and the psychic bond adds a surreal layer as man and monster spiral toward destruction. On video shelves, Spasms was hard to ignore. Its unforgettable cover art promised reptilian mayhem, and the presence of two major stars gave it instant cult appeal. While uneven, the film remains a fascinating mix of exploitation excess and star-driven horror. Today it survives as one of the stranger hybrids of the decade, where animal attack thrills meet supernatural paranoia. If you love discovering forgotten horror and cult cinema, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the films time forgot. Thanks for watching, and remember, always be kind and rewind, because every movie is someone's favorite.